I've got a bit of a roundup for you today. As post E3, there are a fair few things floating around that I feel are worth discussing. So let's start off with some comments from Hideki Kamiya, who loves to tease us. He has teased Bayonetta 3, Okami 2, and a potential collaboration with Capcom. So, he was speaking with Game Central at E3, and he mentioned a few things, one of which was Bayonetta 3, and he made this in a response to a comment about Bayonetta's hairstyle, in which he said, quote, "Then we will take that into account when we design her haircut when we start doing 3, if we ever make 3. Of course we want to make 3, why should it end at 2? Now, given that he said in the past that he doesn't see Bayonetta 3 happening, this is a fairly interesting change of tune from Kamiya. Obviously, it doesn't mean that the game is 100% going to happen, but he's at least open to the idea, which is more than he seemed previously. Now, he also said, quote, "I've spent a lot of time thinking in my head what that game would be. I've got ideas in my head for Okami 2 as well. We've got other scale buttons in our heads too." Now, further on in the interview, he was also asked about comments he made back in a 2015 interview about meeting with Jun Takuchi, to discuss, quote, "something perhaps happening between Platinum Games and Capcom," which is the Capcom collab I spoke about a second ago. Thankfully, though, he didn't deny it. He said, quote, "That conversation happened. I go drinking with Takuchi quite a bit, and every time we go drink, he's like, 'Let's do something, man, let's do something, man,' and I continue to say, 'Let's do something, man, let's do something.'" Now, rather amusingly, at this point in the interview, Kamiya apparently moved his jacket aside and pointed to a t-shirt he was wearing featuring a wolf, and he said, quote, "I'm stealing Phil's gimmick," and of course referring to the fact that Phil Spencer has a penchant for wearing t-shirts that allude to future announcements at major events, so perhaps sometime in the future we can look forward to an Okami 2 announcement. That would make my life. Can I just throw that out there? Okami Den? Nah, that was a pretty big disappointment. Nothing really added there, to be honest. A real Okami 2? Yes, please. Next up are some comments from Nintendo. Now, of course, at this year's E3, as promised, they showed Pokemon Sun and Moon and lots of Zelda and not much else. At their Treehouse stream, they, of course, did not have a traditional conference. However, we have some teasers from Shigeru Miyamoto, who spoke to IGN about their plans for Mario in the future. And he said, quote, "We're always challenging ourselves to create something new, so hopefully you'll see a new kind of Mario in about a year or two. Maybe next E3 we'll be able to share something." Now, this doesn't really mean much, but Miyamoto did acknowledge that there are certain conventions that pretty much have to be part of a Mario game, so with that in mind, it is a little bit more difficult to freshen the franchise. However, he did go on to say that they've had some new staff joining Nintendo that have allowed them to examine these conventions with quote-unquote fresh eyes. So, obviously, we're not going to hear anything about this for some time, most likely, but it is something that they're at least thinking about, which isn't really surprising, but still. Now, of course, one of the other things we had revealed at E3 2016 from Microsoft was Dead Rising 4. Now, we've got some news from a developer over at Capcom Vancouver who basically revealed that it will be exclusive to Windows 10 and Xbox One, but only for a while. Now, his tweet reads, quote, "You'll be able to play it first on Xbox One and Windows 10. And the journalist Ryan Brown offered further clarification on Twitter when he said, quote, "Capcom rep says that Dead Rising 4 is a one-year timed exclusive for MS." So does that mean we're having a sort of Rise of the Tomb Raider type situation where it comes out for Xbox One and Windows 10 first and then on PlayStation 4? Yeah, that's probably what this means, but of course this is not really an official announcement, but it does seem a fairly reasonable thing to do. Of course, Dead Rising was Xbox One and Windows 10, or Windows exclusive. But it's not unreasonable for it to be on the PS4, I guess, after a timed exclusivity deal similar to Rise of the Tomb Raider. And lastly, I'm going to finish up with a bit of an update on something a few days ago, or a little while ago now actually. We actually had the sad cancellation of Allison Road, one of the few games that was still carrying the torch of PT or Silent Hills. Now, of course, it was cancelled completely out of the blue, and no explanation was given. And we have finally had a statement from Lilith Limited, but sadly this statement tells us absolutely nothing about why it was cancelled. But I'll read it anyway. And they say, quote, "After a long consideration between Team 17 and ourselves, we have reached a mutual agreement to end our collaboration on publishing Allison Road under Team 17's games label. Sometimes things pan out differently than expected, as game development and publishing have so many layers of complexity. We'd like to especially thank everyone for their support throughout. It has and will always be appreciated." Now, naturally, this actually raises more questions than it actually answers, because the wording here is pretty key. They have ended their agreement to end their collaboration on publishing Allison Road under Team 17's games label. So does this mean that we'll see Allison Road pop back up on Kickstarter? Do they still have the rights? I really hope so, because they could potentially go back to Kickstarter and publish it independently like they were going to originally before Team 17 swooped out and at the time, as we thought, saved the day. But obviously, that's not how it worked out. But at the time, we thought, yes, this means it's actually going to come out, and obviously, maybe not so much. But this leads me to think that the game isn't really cancelled in the sort of final sense of the word, as we'll never see Allison Road. It's cancelled for now, perhaps, while they sort out the rights. This version of Allison Road is cancelled that we're working on with Team 17, and what we're going to get is their sort of true vision or whatever. What I hope to come out of this is that Lilith still hold the rights to Allison Road, they go back to Kickstarter, it gets funded, and we get the game probably in a couple of years, to be honest, but at least we'll get the game. Their wording seems to indicate that the game isn't really dead, just the collaboration between Team 17 and Lilith is the thing that's dead. Now obviously, the falling out of Team 17 and Lilith Limited could very much mean that Allison Road will never see the light of day, and that Team 17 still have the rights and Lilith won't be able to get them back, and we won't ever see this particular game actually get developed. That would be a sad outcome, but unfortunately it is one of the potential outcomes. Hopefully we'll get a more clear answer soonish on what exactly is going on, if we can expect Allison Road to come back in any way. I really hope so, because what we saw looked really promising, and to be honest, I was quite disappointed when Allison Road was cancelled. So we're going to have to see on that one, unfortunately, but that is me done for this roundup video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.